inundation control rates and percentage of population and water decreases, non-availability drop in corruption and active population happens become unhappy village combination or the wonder over skill challenges such as disease generations and conflict reason and core possible. Advantage to his modeling, global shortages are escalating, which causes an infinite number of unpredictable threats. Tension 19, water insecurity, water crisis, and all exactly insecurity related few values here, water because difficult demand for water supply damage by overconsumption and water insecurity, exactly international solution for the international community. U.S. leadership is key. Empirics aren't predictive. Future demand gaps would be worse, making inefficient global sharing institutions untenable. And Galcade 15 first piece into the water sources come to melting air, sea depression, no reason for the water bottle for the jail, the building, modernization, depression, rural water means undervalued to reduce short-term focus on the demand is running challenges on the water, water difficulties, water shit, and the water sources, like the implication for the regions for water region use of water is at the time of the original American markets outside with unrivaled prestige. And specifically, it causes war between India and Pakistan, which goes nuclear and drops great powers, Claire 20 continental water period and things catching president shortage. We don't get water easy to obtain influence in the states, but should disabling states are vulnerable. The scarcity and reduction of drug whites of continental shortages, particularly leaders Pakistan, clear example of damage and sensitive positions for the nation. But then your research Pakistan possesses substantial news Pakistan and would be occurs ensuring water than purchase water and then evidence of the available for more India. Possessing conventional reserve Pakistan leader in nuclear weapon weapon demanding nuclear weapon covering earth and Sino-India conflict Claire 20 potential nuclear water ban defense water ministers refreshments market usually disappears the climate causing watchment and some of the Chinese leadership including receiving water diversion and Indians become element of and every sort of average the process of reducing the in Washington precipitate U.S. intervention. And AppSolve provides a blueprint for global efficiency measures and crowdsourced market models for all 21 market for nature and methods the model for logistical plans of the market involves a platform and rules for water processes by the market is an effective for humans and implemented motivate teachers in the market law, flexibility markets and water security and market building knowledge experience around the world. And trade interdependency means that U.S. markets are interconnected to global water management. Dolanal 21 because the region of different shortages affect the globe affected trade cooperation across the market and regional changes on the every basin in regions and for other regions under stress. And thus the plan denies the federal government should regulate interstate water trading. Finally, solvency the plan solves reforms water supply solutions ensure long-term solution inevitable shortages to couple up 14 solutions so by bring water under pumping no longer 5 months water. We already have more efficient market performance markets of the trading market management the market federal initiative from nature cooperation with the central market encourage conservation. And they are key creates a vital information price incentives and flexibility necessary for conservation and proper allocation of water resources that will overcome current uncertainty. Other 14 market powerful allocation, high value exchange and information markets, industrial water markets, intended for efficient allocation, incentives for conservation power, it's already been purchased like another and along farms, water intended to receive the agreement, receive payments, because water prices for and fluctuate, prices change, and more information, and different for the local review, and the economies and experience, reducing the higher position planning, probably could join to have the near reduce market reducing and transport, does able to build them and cap sustainable tech and any alternatives result in transition more with 19. Because of the touches of common such as the van and limitation for the multitude of the degradation of decades of the higher mentioned minerals that have used managed to emission emerging people or the common leadership bank of the trouble thing and part of the facility and reducing trade of questions when you're the carbon reduction 7,000 version for different drops in cost of all and batteries made and renewable from the opera facility the reason for an 84% decrease in propulsion replacing existing plants will be efficient and very hard to fix your chip can be defined cheaper methods of any system that could be climate change it looks like it. And uniqueness goes off. Markets solve every unsustainability war and prefer the Yale API and statistical indicators. Zittelman 20 as growth of the environmental regulation is false API 16 indicator again environmental health air water body natural reason pollution findings from relative with environmental performance companies country material burden environment when along the things capital result and view a clear most for frequency highs economically unfrequent results or less empathy all the right thing happens in the ways natural smartphone authority defensive consumer telephone camera dictation places of cooperation in the United States system they prefer in the fact that social result of failing never history and the capitals they provide the real world system and anytime history provides better environmental solutions and capitalism. Unregulated markets are inevitable. Question is how not when they come. Wilkinson 20 the water the water really has original plan never equates of it's about the absent markets informal markets and efficient and useful commercial formal markets in the US are going to be established how would be critical regulation has been key to market continue to be bearish for the U.S. and perspective dropping high level markets. One needs to allocate the evaluating spending for regulation in the U.S. and the developed market information is still according to lack of regulation government on rights aside. Revision cap and trade and sustainability department the outcome must be evaluated just because the likelihood of retreat. What are like full uncertainty or notice states fail. Only federal leadership can create the necessary information. Coupled all 14 understanding broadening the Fed is relevant markets if they're facilitating large scale planning corporations developing the reforming significant political aspects like information Fed important according to the Fed purpose and the sale of trading sales subsidy political pressure and heavy facility pressure strong and learning controversies are reluctant to allow what to leave. That's good for us.
Okay, cool. Are you open for cross?
Yeah, just let me get back to my doc, but yeah.
Okay. Okay. Why does the plan increase U.S. leadership?
That's not our argument.
But don't you say U.S. leadership is key in your
You
angle?
don't increase U.S. leadership. It's the argument is that the U.S. is a global leader now. So if you're trying to get a link to hedge, it doesn't link.
Okay. Why would India and Pakistan go to war?
Sure, we've read India and Pakistan declared 20 card. We've read evidence that they're currently diverting water from the Indus River because of Pakistan's unfavorable position, and because of Pakistan's unfavorable position on the Indus River, it would cause Pakistan to lose its water, and that causes this unrest and war between them.
Oh, why would India model after the U.S.?
Sure, we've read some pretty good evidence. The herd evidence says that this markets in the U.S. would serve as a model for others to follow. The
experts as a model, but why would other countries follow it?
Wait, what?
So you say it serves as a model, but why would other countries follow that model?
The herd evidence says that it provides a blueprint for others to follow. The Golan evidence says that U.S. markets are connected to global water management, and also says that if the U.S. has an advantage of water trade in the U.S., it would allow the U.S. to become a virtual exporter of water. So we don't even need to win that India, Pakistan model the markets.
Okay, sure. Moving on to solvency. Why does the uniqueness go up?
Sure, the Zettelman card cites 16 statistical indicators and the Yale API to say that capitalism is sustainable and is a net force for good.
Okay, and why would only the U.S. agriculture stabilize the globe?
The Costella evidence is descriptive of how U.S. ag security suppresses anti-American factions, terrorism, etc. And lack of that would cause for example, North Korea, Russia, China to spiral terrorism to spur, etc. And
how would your app increase security?
Sure, we've read evidence that shortages completely collapse the agriculture industry, which obviously is our internal link to that.
Okay, and how does the plan solve those shortages?
The point of the F is that in the status quo, scarcity is accelerating due to lack of management, not supply. The F regulates interstate water trading and essentially is regulating these markets that are inefficient, bad, have monopolies, and allows them to trade efficiently, which is our internal link to solving shortages. That's the DeBear evidence.
Okay. Well, that's about the end of cross. My partner will send in their document.
Cool.
Okay, document is sent. Order is going to be 3 off, then the shortages advantage and the modeling advantage. Oh, sorry. 3 off. I meant 4 off. If everyone received it. Oh my gosh. Okay, that's weird. One of the cards did not make its way into the one in C. Sorry, I just realized that. I'm gonna send it as a separate card, but it's gonna be on the fourth off anyway. So yeah. Again, the order is just gonna be 4 off, and then the shortages advantage and the modeling advantage. Oh my gosh, why did I send it? I just realized I put it in the wrong place. That's okay. All the cards are in the actual document. I've been looking at it wrong. Okay, I'm gonna assume everyone is ready and everyone has document. If not, please unmute and tell me to stop for any reason. And I'll be good to go.
First off, the United States federal government should substantially increase foreign aid to countries facing resource shortages, especially water, expand international food aid, and at least double investment in agriculture and full usage in food research, use positive inducements to get countries to use sustainable water usage and climate model. Amend the International Revenue Code Section 7704 to include renewable energy projects eligible for the massive limited partnership. Establish a carbon tax that starts $25 per metric ton and increases 5% per year. Modify the legal infrastructure for mineral resources such that carbon in developed fossil fuels can be personally reserved or perpetual easements with the assurance that its carbon will never released through combustion in a company private investment with an undeveloped carbon reserve purchasing strategy. Aid solves food. Key 15. You should double investment over the next 10 years. Public aid will be a game changer. Innovation should be transferred to Africa and South Asia. Countries should consider a bipartisan commission funding initiative to facilitate a partnership between universities and developing more climate change and the food supply producers cannot innovate with better data. This should be a nutrition key priority when innovations of reducing waste are needed. Then 48 suitable SSA and solve threats. Gupta and Kerry 16. Trump proposed a 32% cut in the budget for the Department of Defense recognized the importance of soft power. Aid enjoys near immediate results in state innovability metrics, including quality of governance, low corruption, enhanced social cohesion, and more vibrant civil society. Investment in development has security benefits in another critical nation that pose a greater threat to U.S. national security interests of C plus aid. Policymakers should expand aid to countries that pose a higher security threat, such as assistance may facilitate other peace and stability efforts. Then the first point says that green tech and outcompete fossil fuels. Magna 16. MLB has substantial investment. It will increase renewable energy access to capital and dramatically reduce renewable project costs. MLBs will be in renewable projects that will reduce cost of investors, which reduce costs. Extending MLB gives the renewable industry predictable and sustainable attractive renewable projects generate these stable and predictable rates of return. MLB permit business more capital creates jobs, promotes more diverse energy supply. MLB promote diverse and carbon neutral energy supply because renewables are financially complete with the fossil fuel energy comparable to fossil fuels would increase renewable sale value. And the second plan taxes carbon and stashes electricity center emission. Kaufman at all 16. Electricity promotes towards GHG than other sector for the U.S. to meet its emission target. Fossil fuel usage and electricity was significantly present carbon will induce investment in low carbon technology development, which will be crucial. Electricity to adjust the carbon price immediately. The no factors import as the operating costs and cheaper results may be large and suggest a carbon price to be permanent with a carbon price when it will become more competitive and natural gas carbon price will lead to sustainable emission reduction in the electricity sector. We just play results for 25 metric per ton. The carbon price probably could decline by 85%. The carbon price reduces electricity sector emissions by over 60%, and more farmer like the carbon price will cause larger emission reductions than are predicted in the forecast. And the third and fourth plank keep fossil fuels in the ground so that it can't create emissions. Frost 15 northern China or India is likely to implement carbon in the foreseeable future. Mainstream proposals may use unreasonable assumptions about attempt to reconcile carbon debate with the condition can be used are guilty of unfounded optimism. Proposal focused on the source could reduce emissions by 40%. Does not require unrealistic levels of international cooperation. Does not create artificial markets. Credits that can be financed in federal funding. It uses regulatory reform to leverage 5% 4% carbon mitigation without the political backlash to regulation. In fact, the U.S. federal government should modify the legal infrastructure for finding resources such that carbon in undeveloped fossil fuels can be reserved. Activists can buy steel and coal with the assurance that its carbon would never be released. The government could even use it to establish an undeveloped carbon reserve, cut the carbon reserve. On to the second off, federal control over water markets, list federalism, environmental diversity to the state backlash means the Lincoln Loan Insurance case, Craig 11, there have been calls for national water markets. Supreme Court declared the groundwater subject to resource hoarding, the net co-creation national water what operates with shipping water federally given cars general to state water laws and national water could almost can certainly generate considerable opposition at the state level, such as opposition will thwart federal attempts to create a national water market. Then, like even when the design as cooperative federal water regulation drives centralization, takes away state authority over water resources. Box 16, the EPA and courts have been overreached when it comes to the implementation of the CW. The statute built on cooperation has instead become a totally confined federal power and reduced the ability to manage the water resources. The right and state local communities should be protected to move authority and decision making down to the state. Many water issues are better served by decentralized roads. Internal link preventing federalism complex is crucial for broad broader environmental policy responding to climate change. The lingo alone turns case we did 21. There's how to maintain existing allocations of authority, finding more kill the balance and critical for the environment, future environmental protection. The states of systems depend on working relations between the federal government and the state when not function. A problem arises where the quality of environmental policy and looming issues like climate change and water pollution. There needs to be some flexibility and a lot of power sharing. Authority must be allocated intelligently towards preserving partnership between the states and the DC. Impact climate change causes extinction in 1919. Global extinction is possible due to interrelated, non-linear cascading effects, feedback into big points. An upper IT collapse because rapid sea level rise, giant force increases fires and release of carbon. Even modest exposure large fraction of making a single member lagging. Even there's 1% probability, extinction the whole will be more important than literally a trillion times. Third off. The 50 cent oil relevant territories substantially increase interstate and interstate water trading institutions, states and create interstate water markets. Create 11. Existing supplies are often shared between states, but learn to transfer interwater. The market effectively allocates resources. Every Western state increases support of water markets using the state will result in more equitable interstate distribution. Barriers to markets between states are insignificant. Onto the fourth law, protection means cessation of use. Monadnock 96. Conservation connotes conservation of use, while the term production commands a cessation of use. Violation after does not seize water use in water market voting issue for limits and granted outweighs precision. Or in a way to affect water, prevent thirst to their interpretation allows hundreds of non-point source pollution as and swallows for regulation, air diagonal massive talk with unlimited mechanism onto the shortages advantage. First, the book guarantees evidence says something about collapsing agriculture sets higher prices and scarcity drive production decision that increase productivity. Second, but water transfers allows farmer and selling their water instead of using it to plant crops results in less ag production. Second, 21, Sacramento River produced 500,000 acres of rice, but this year much less water choice. Should they plant water or assist themselves the toil and self farmer choose to solve almost all of 130 acre field of rice remaining 500 acres to prepare what water he could have used. He's signal away for still at 575 per acre foot. The rent compares favorably to growing. It makes economic sense. Farmers will produce 20% less. Lack of government investment in semiconductors is a major cause. Even if they make more chips, they'll not function. Cheeseboro 17. The government is now playing small actors in the global market that drive microelectronics. They have created crisis during assuring defense and security systems are free from the hidden effects or mellow them impact operation at a critical time. Second, the industry adapts around with the lack of water because it directly impacts supply, but expansion of semiconductors works waste and overconsumption, which don't care about fixing getting 21 largest semiconductor company makes a key sustainable project. Water grew by 25%. He has MC built to meet his part of just cutting waste. Intel's used 161,000 tons of water a day. Chip markets are focused on the water use. USMC will take industrial wastewater and semiconductor could meet 50% of water needs. Intel also makes sure through better management. Water use will remain high on the agenda of new factories and Arizona need to target low recycling more prevalent against the power consumption. TSMC use 16,900 kilowatts of energy. Advanced lithography machines are 10 times more power intensive than the previous one. It does not look like it will be losing much to its place as a supply situation. It turns bigger. It turns warming Crawford at all 21. Competing accounted for 20% of global energy manufacturing accounts for more than carbon dioxide. Technology advances enable chips to become more powerful, yet billions of translators, it's increasing elaborate cut the carded work. We're already in global famine. It's not caused by lack of food but geopolitics. Spring 19, thanks to common political unrest and drought, the world is in the midst of the worst famine since World War II. 85 million people require emergency food extension. The number of people risk of famine has increased by 80% since 2050. Bad government pursues policies that deprive people, forcing families to live off around meat, disease, poor weather, rising prices led to food shortages do not lead to famine, and most famines are not caused by shortage of food, rather than access to food. Onto the modeling advantage. First, Anglo-K and Sticklers a lot of waxing eloquent about water and zero warn. Second, even they're right about some public. The one that I want to see impacts both involve countries affected by scarcity where water shortages, increased cooperation, COVID-19, less precipitation, increased conflict, its downstream configurations. The most recent study finds that precipitation scarcity reduces the likelihood of water scarcity and then incentives of repairing states to cooperate rather than fight. Transatlantic treaties and international frameworks to mitigate the risk of conflict. Successful management assured water basin should not be based on water allocation alone, cut the card alone. And 3, India and Pakistan are cooperating on water right now. Meghalaya and Aurora 21. India is not Pakistan hold the first meeting on water and use the water rights from the Indus River and further approaching their talks are at least in effort to re-engage both nations are focused on calming COVID-19 according to Safar and Kashmir. At the water sharing rates, both sides are both narrow differences. We believe in amicable resolution. And the only line talks about modeling and the herd evidence. It's about groundwater markets. Herd 21. Groundwater. 5 surface waters markets of the public. Either solves in the South Asian groundwater markets to the Af expansion, which causes more surface groundwater exploitation and decoupled from the surface water markets. Hasani 13 groundwater markets is fundamentally different from surface water markets. South Asia might face significant hurdles to surface water markets. Groundwater is already commonplace. Cut the card at commonplace. Commonplace across. If anyone would like a quick copy, I can send a quick copy.
Okay, could we get the marked copy first, and then we can start?
Yeah. Yeah, you can ask questions. I'm just like, yeah.
Okay, cool. I guess starting on the federalism disadvantage, or let me start on top. Starting on the federalism disadvantage, the link card BAS, it says, quote, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer have been overreaching. How is that the F?
Hold on.
Or actually first, like status.
Conditional.
Okay, can you kick links?
Yes.
Net benefit to the advantage counterplan.
The federalism decide.
How does it shield?
Because
I can answer this question. So basically, it shields the link because we're not using the states. The federal government already regulates trade, so it doesn't link to federalism because like the states already know that the federal government can regulate trade and does all like international things. So the states will
Wait.
be mad because of it.
Wait, state. Okay, I mean, sure. The BAS evidence, I guess, going back to the first question, talks about the EPA being overreaching. How is that the F?
the BAS evidence.
The link evidence for federalism.
Let me go there. Oh, the box evidence. Okay. Well, okay. So basically, it's talking about water regulation and how the EPA and CWA have been.
Okay, the F has specified the BOR as our actor. How do we link to an EPA link?
Because it still represents the federal government.
So you think that the federal government always goes through the EPA?
No, it's not saying that the federal government also always goes through the EPA. It's saying
Okay, so if they don't, then what's the link?
because it's talking about federal water regulation as a whole.
It says, it says, quote, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer Corps have been overreaching when it comes to the implementation of the CWA. How is that the F?
Okay, we're talking about, okay, your actor is still a part of the federal government. Our argument is that the federal government says that.
So you think that in order to regulate interstate water trading, the federal government needs to go through the EPA?
We're saying it just, okay, it's still, your still actor is still the federal
The
government.
advantage counterplan, can you explain how it shields federalism again?
Okay, sure. So basically, the advantage counterplan is this thing where the United States federal government, like the first main part of it, where it solves your second advantage, is the fact that the federal government would create financial incentives for the rest of the world to do the count. To the rest
Okay, sure, but then what about this like carbon tax stuff?
my answer. So basically, because the rest of the world is doing it and the US is like doing anything for that certain part, or for that part, like because this solves your modeling part.
Wait, so you think that like if it's done internationally, states will just be like, okay, it's fine if the Fed does it?
International stuff, that's the federal government.
Okay, we'll take a little breath.
Stop prep. How much do we use? 215. In the meantime, oh shoot. The order is going to be the T cessation. Can you turn on your volume? T cessation, state federalism, or sorry. Starting off with case shortages, modeling, solvency, states, or all right, shortages, modeling, solvency, T cessation, states counterplan, the advantage counterplan, and then federalism. We're gonna take like 15 seconds more prep. Sorry. Hold on. Me too. I used 36. We've used 316 of prep. I'm sending it out right now. All right. Does everyone have? Wait, no, I'll give you a second. Okay. Does everyone have the doc? I know. All right, sorry.
Reno doesn't have the talk.
What's that?
Reno doesn't have the talk. Sorry.
Huh?
Reno doesn't have the talk.
Oh, sorry. Did you try checking spam, or is it the Wi-Fi again? They don't have it, or the judges.
It's not on my phone. I don't know what's going on. Okay, we just got it.
All right. Do you need the order again, or are you good?
Yeah, the order again.
All right. So it's going to be shortages, modeling, solvency, T cessation, states counterplan, the advantage counterplan, federalism. Good. All right. Shortages, food insecurity causes extinction, instability in the emboldens rogue states and revision
Hey,
powers.
hold on, I don't think we have Jet.
Oh,
Sorry.
Didn't see that.
Hey, sorry, I'm back. My Wi-Fi just reset, but I think I'm good now. I'm on a different network.
So are you ready? I know. All right. Shortages. Food insecurity causes extinction and instability in both rogue states and rivers, powers collapse of diplomatic channels and allies and adversaries, triggers mass migration that escalates to great power. That's Castle. 1C1. Obviously, you can't grow food without water, plant and soils allocation, which increases ag productivity, which makes it resilient to droughts. Efficiency bolsters defense against shortages. 1C2. The plans supply and demand mechanism solves and food shortages farmers are in higher demand. 1C6. It doesn't matter because food conflicts will escalate and food shortages are like consistently escalating now, and one good drought will like end us all. Warming causes extinction and leads to severe weather conditions. Ecosystems collapse and are in conflict. Positive feedback is favorable, being points overwhelm their defense. That's right. Modeling. Water shortages cause extinction and exacerbates international tensions, cyber attacks, terrorism, biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, pose existential threat risks. Stinson. That was Stinson. Indo-Pac conflict causes extinction. Superiority causes user lose pressures. Water diversion escalates through miscalculation. That's clear. Indo-China conflict escalates. Brahmaputra is a critical strategic region for both countries that causes lash out. U.S. India as a counterweight to China in the region and intervenes. That's clear. The plan gets modeled. 1. Water leadership. America's unrivaled procedure global water governance. Reinforced water allocation will be adopted abroad. That's Ungoki. 2. Institutional model. Global forums on adoption of water markets are the only successful the U.S. provides a blueprint for positive implementation. That's heard. 3. Virtual water. Exploitation of virtual water through production of goods means solving domestically alone is sufficient. That's stolen. 1C1. Ungoki specifically cites geopolitics are centered around water and that the U.S. needs to reform its water governance. 1C4. It's still in context of water markets as a whole. Other evidence cites water markets as a whole. Disregard the semiconductors thing. We didn't read a semiconductor scenario. Answer 1C2. Answer to their water wars defense. 1 statistics analysis of the 45 countries, 200 scenarios proves that water shortages cause conflict. That's it. 2. The inside of their evidence empirics not predicted future demand gaps will cause competition instead of cooperation and overwhelm sharing mechanisms. That's Ngoki. The plan solves framing issue. Their cards are all in context of underrated markets privatization. The plan reforms markets and make them more effective. That's the bear. 1. Empirical case studies are more markets are private on rivers confirms they lead to a decrease in consumption. That's other. 2. Regulation cap and trade mechanism ensures success. Means conservation and ensures sufficient usage. That's the bear. 3. Pricing only water market solves and forcing users to recognize the true cost of water that reflects external factors like supply and demand causes a shift to high value uses. That's other. 4. Innovation. Markets spur development of technology to manage droughts and climate change. That's the whole. T cessation. 1. We meet a plan to end unpermitted use of water. My tenant just says we need to cease a use of water and insert the bear. 2. Counter interpretation protection of water resources means reallocation of natural water rights. Now, game 2K protection by appropriation of water rights and objection is not a maximum concept of use, but the allocation of water resources with a fully recognition protection also constitutes use. 3. Counter interpretation protection means permitting and not prevention. Colangelo 20. Another CW protection just means have a permitting against the landers for landing projects that impact the waters must first get approval at landers after reduce impact. 4. Afghan every app loses to pigs and offsets as reuse CB. 5. In net ground allocation rights requires substantial changes in unifying ground as opposed to minute regulation apps. 6. Limits the majority of prevent pollution over any economic activity. 7. Predictability. Interprets the gold standard is the court case. Water resources usable is Science Daily 18. Water resources are useful to humans. These all uses require fresh water. 8. Reasonability key to avoid substance crowd. 9. Mechanic is in the context of whaling. Their interpretation was struck down in court. Supreme Court of Hawaii 14. This is duty to protect the water resources. Imperative duty to protect does not mean all uses must cease or all waters must be returned. The level of protection may vary. States counter. Perm to both federalism, states enforcing a plan reinvigorates the Hanshaw 17. States Congress adopted the CWA state actions and improve the quality of nation's water system. Federalism states assume their responsibility for enforcement federally approved programs. The same as adopt water quality program than federal law. Perm to the counter plan. Their solvency advocate lists that water. The federal government should encourage water market between states that flows app. Strike down the counter plan is straight up against the Constitution. 12. Commerce clause away from states any and all power over interstate commerce. Established commerce clause is not only a positive grant to Congress but a negative constraint upon the states. CCC means the courts measure state legislation against commerce clause even in the absence of Congress has the power to regulate commerce between states exclusively federal. Modeling deficit. Only a national water market sends a clear signal, and the federal government is the only one involved in international affairs. That's heard. And existing public projects for interstate water markets disproves it. The advantage count plan. Allocation is key with scarcity is caused by lack of efficiency and proper distribution, not supply. That's the bear. The first key evidence is terrible, just as innovation of reducing water food waste is needed, but only water pricing can create innovation in the agricultural sector by making companies internalize cost of use. That's Booker. They also can't solve because Booker says that water allocation is uniquely key to agricultural outcomes. I guess this group of cards is attempting to establish solvency for the modeling advantage, but the card is absolutely terrible, just as aid would allow for more peace and stability efforts. Obviously, doesn't assume that water scarcity is a tipping point that is escalating fighting now, cross-supply, all warrants for war. And that was in the case overview. 2, innovation, no innovation. Only water pricing can get private investors to develop tech. That's very unclear. 3, perm do both. 4, perm do the counterplan. Do both shields because the app doesn't link to federalism. 5, do the plan and combination of planks. 6, links and not benefit. Clearly links are link is about the EPA being overreaching. If they win the app, then it means it's also the CP. Markets are key. Lopez level 16. Population with the market increase in water considering climate and shows the ACD as well as more trying to management based on abusing a total amount of water. Evidence shows that difficulty of implementation for any problems of reason almost all water is already used and the cost of high costs of generating additional supply. The implementation of demand measures to priority water markets solve mismanagement through reallocation by existing resources, mitigating both structural and legal scarcity. Advanced counterplans legalized object fee are impossible to project. Default app on every plank without evidence. New UNC explanation justifies new 1AR answers. Planks must have solvency advocates. The most predictable encourage research can only via policy, not infinite behavior, key to fairness. Federalism. We are the Peru reclamation that's called no link because allocation, because the plan is allocation of water, not water regulations that the generic links are to. No link to plans exclusively federal authority, little 12. Commerce clause took away from states, so any and all power interstate commerce are just established. Commerce clause actually, I read this card on states cross apply it here. Federalism is resilient in issues compartmentalized. Rodriguez 14 creates ongoing negotiation disagreements. Federalism framework for integration negotiations have regulars based over immigration drug policy. Healthcare these play out as species of federalism, which consists of bureaucratic negotiations. They don't like to have maneuver the federal discretion from actual ministers sometimes engage emergent parameters of course to define a negotiation and relationships are neither locked in and zero sum nor bound fixed rules. Federalism shot kid 12-4. Federalism, the federal government is public health and governors are war with Mayor Trump. Imagine impuged vote by counting state officials. Federalism water conflicts are inevitable. Create 13. The Fed as long as there is strong water conflict and convention increasing the impact of water resources demands for fresh water, increasing conflicts over water have intensified as long as water allocation business and convention intensify the role. Biden is already thrashing federalism with high spending. Weapon Pignelli 12. The Biden agenda is producing a greatest federal government domination. The founders of the United States that gave equal partners, but money comes with the strings and bureaucracy grows and further efforts being legislated and encourages on states that includes electric and procedures, a $15 minimum wage, control free college, and prohibiting cutting taxes. New WOTUS rule thumbs, video 1118. EPA has to replace NWPR news definition even more stringent than WOTUS, creating a confusion. NWPR protects the cooperative federalism, but enroll back to NWPR. No spillover, Constantine 16. Federalism can only longer designated as one type of tribute by challenge, polarization, departure, tax increases, depending on inability to compromise one the result of the specific policy relying over following line with coercive federalism. Also, there's no impact because or the app solves the impact of climate change better because their warrants simply list like federalism being key for like broader like climate change policies and stuff like that. However, only the app provides actual sustainable like climate mitigation strategies as well as agriculture adaptation. And it also paves the way for carbon sequestration technology that was locked.
Okay, open for cross.
Yeah, I'm open to cross.
Can you explain all of the argument, all of the terms you made on the counterplan, advantage counterplan?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I said perm do both, perm do the counterplan, and perm do the plan in any combination of the planks.
Okay. Okay. So, is there any reason to reject the team?
No. Or yes, on the advantage counterplan flow, advantage counterplans legalize object fiat and are impossible to predict, and planks without evidence and planks must have solvency advocates.
Wait, so you're saying that no advantage counterplans because what? Could you repeat that, sorry?
Because they legalize object fiat and they're impossible to predict.
Okay. Okay, and why do they legalize object fiat?
Sure, because basically, well, you can answer this if you know better, but
well, what do you mean? Well, I guess like advantage counterplans like fiat the like certain objects we use. Like let's the ones.
I think that's what object fiat is.
I mean, it's just like advantage counterplan theory. It's not. But yeah, like we'll argue, I guess, that advantage counterplans do like allow for like the field of object, not necessarily that. Or yeah, I mean, just
Okay. I'm
it's
not
really not that deep.
I don't think that's what object field is. What were your other arguments on the on the advantage counterplan?
So basically we said allocation key. We argued against your solvency advocates, like the Keefe evidence and the group Descartes. I can explain those if you want. There's no innovation, all the perms that I listed, and it links to net benefit because your link evidence is about the EPA being overreaching. And so if you win that the AF somehow links to federalism, even though it's not the EPA, then that means that the counterplan also links. And also we read the market's key card for Lopez.
Okay. You got that? Yeah. Okay. On the federalism stuff, what in the first card about the LII card says that the plan's exclusively federal authority?
Sure. So basically interstate commerce was like it gets struck down by Congress because if the states do it, because it's the federal government's exclusive authority, states can't regulate or have power over interstate commerce. So basically our no-link arg is that, sorry, what?
Is that linked into federalism?
No, so basically we're saying that
Your argument is that the federal government entrenches on state authority. We're arguing that regulating interstate water transfers was already illegal. So it doesn't entrench or go on state authority at all.
Okay. We're starting prep Stop prep, we used 345. I'll put that in the chat. Are you sending the doc? My partner is sending the doc right now.
The order.
Give me a second. My partner is sending it right now.
Okay, I just sent it. Okay, so I just sent it. The order is going to be the state's counter plan and then the other counter plan. And it's not an advantage counter plan, by the way. We were like miswording it during process. Does everyone have the document? Okay, if you don't have it, just let me know. But otherwise I'll start my speech.
Sorry, I just got to open it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
Cool. If you're not ready, just let me know, but otherwise I'll start my speech. State's counter plan overview. The state's counter plan solves all of the app and has the net benefit of federalism to that because it does not disrupt this division of power between the states and federal government. Extend the creative evidence. Western states are already doing interstate water markets and they're working. Any barriers to states cooperating, i.e. any solvency deficits they have to make, are significant and the states can overcome them. The evidence also says the states solve better because they know how to do equitable distribution, which is the answer to that LI 12 card, which shows that this counter plan can actually work as working in the status quo. And as a Purdue explicitly, especially doesn't shield the link. The CB provides uniqueness to the disadvantage that it requires states to do interstate water markets by those are by nature non-discriminatory and be upheld or their pike. The absent it would be blatant collapse of federalism. Signatory 15. Statutes that treat non-citizens and non-citizens are subject to applying non-discriminatory statutes to be held unless the burden is clearly excessive. The first requirements were neutral. The requirements did not mention citizens. This person was under the pike test. State ownership may support limited precedents for its own citizens. The court acknowledges that economic interests to be considered. The confluence of these realities then weighed against the burdens of commerce. If the statute is non-discriminatory, it would be probably upheld. However, the law may be discriminatory by treating differently because the state of origin. The requirement was explicit barrier to commerce. The discriminatory statute sees more demanding tests and for his. Nebraska only gave one justification to people that the state can do produce this evidence. The court would hold the most conservative statutes unconstitutional. Moving on to federal follow-on. Federal follow-on is empirically choose specifically for state environmental action beyond Code 20. State governments consider national governments make more robust commitments. Congress modeled supervision program after New Jersey selected to have voice sides. California's adopted 50 standard for appliances. Other states follow the speed eventually in federal standards. Subnational actors continue to testify for adoption at federal level. And B, states are laboratories to generate industry compliance. Makes follow-on less politically costly. Golden 7 12. States in the application for policy adoption at federal level experiments pay off. State policies that are more stringent pressure for more action at federal level can pressure manufacturers to adopt tighter requirements nationwide. California's auto pollution laws of tightening federal standards, heavily efforted by California, instrumental in prompting federal fuel standards and agenda setting goes stops in 21. States defy the Fed through a state level regulatory spillover. California lockdown, but followed by many other states. The law states to set the agenda for federal government. California environmental regulations that affected the auto industry and home states policies sway federal lawmakers. They empirically abandon party ideology. Brunel and C's 18. Academic literature has not been thoroughly explored within environmental policy, incentivizing the member to extend state benefits nationally by analytic 2K roles. One reason for conservation members may support increasing environmental regulation. Why? Just because home state already has such policy. Even if members not necessarily support regs, member may be motivated to level the playing field by requiring all states to adhere to strict standards. This solves all of the false solvency deficits that they give. And also in an answer to the perm due counterplan, the perm due counterplan would be severance and extend our answers to perm due both. Skip like the 50 state fiat. They didn't read it. And moving on to the advantage CP, or sorry, moving on to the other CP, they concede all planks about the first advantage, which is about like all the warming planks, which means we completely solve it as they haven't contested it at all and we solve warming. The counterplan solves positive inducements have more influential power to the plan and can convince countries to increase sustainability practices. That solves any risk of external escalation. Guarantees say yes because they want military, economic, and domestic support. That's weird in an international ally does what we want. We give them military, economic incentives, offers to train troops to integrate military cooperation and security dialogue. We give them more arms and a bunch of money. Machine framing is the best compared to the CP to the status quo, not the app. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it certainly solves the uniqueness of the impacts. And it solves food. The CP solves food impact. That has US increase in research and development projects for agriculture innovation while creating international partnerships that ensure food is distributed globally. That's key. If they say like something about how it doesn't even say stuff about food aids or whatever, but it does. And increasing food aid would address multiple food crises. Lambert 17. Famine in East Africa is worse than ever. Kenya and Ethiopia are severe drought. WFP and UNICEF needs funds. The UN has been forced to go back beyond Nigeria and Niger. Sending million across 45 countries will increase in assistance. Both Republicans and Democrats are uniting. 57 representatives urged federal funds to Syrian civil war is massive emergency agent depend on the US to use food aid and must be increased. Cells better more likely to be modeled. The counterplan is more likely to be modeled. Cheapening fossil fuels without economic harm is the only way to achieve global emissions reductions. Has to see. The evidence of carbon tax would depend on its ability to affect global emissions. The carbon tax scale is the only route to lower global emissions run through. Innovation makes carbon fuel cheaper. Under new theory of negotiation will developing countries accept policies that would slow economic growth. Developing countries will pursue pollution reduction and invest in alternative energy where they're interested to do so, but there's no evidence nor reason to suggest the US can alter negotiating positions by displaying leadership. And all of the perms that they have links to that benefit because any sort of doing of the app leads to water markets in the US, which then makes it so the states can't regulate those things because of the federal government that's opposing it in the United States, which then leads to federalism not happening, which then leads to our impact of federalism, which my partner will explain. And we also don't link to the net benefit of federalism to that because the EPA isn't overreaching because the states themselves don't have anything over interstate relationships or foreign relations. So the EPA isn't overreaching because there's nothing to overreach for. And water markets are not key. All the planks we give are sufficient to show that this solves for the entirety of the plan and for water markets. And answer to solvency advocate, we meet counter interpretation. We don't need a solvency advocate preferred. And when allowing non-solvency advocate counterplans encourage critical thinking and ingenuity. 2, key to check against new apps. 3, no bright line for solvency advocate, moves solar offense, not stable or predictive. And 4, next key negative flex and adaptation. And they say yes. The more powerful ally offering positive inducements systematically guarantees say yes. They have tons of leverage, weird intent. Promise that inducement must be revolvable and the cost of compliance. The condition is dependent on sender's leverage. When the sender has leverage, the sender can easily link its demands to areas in which preferences as well as targets. So non-several the sender sits citations to possess leverage and is more military and economically power than the target. It can draw on power to offer rewards. States has possessed greater leverage with allies in a number of cooperative endeavors. Leverage is the greatest when the sender is bargaining with allies. Enjoys power advantage. Extreme cases dependent on sender for security and well-being. And answer to we don't get our neg fiat is good. 1, reciprocity. They get to fiat and we should too. And 2, neg ground. There are literally no good DAs on the topic, so solves part of the app and is the only way for neg to ever win debate. 3, our job is to negate the resolutions to prove of opportunity cost. And Hanshaw indicates their L111 evidence says that the federal government already overpowers them and makes it so they can't make decisions. And it says that states may adopt a water quality program more stringent than federal law, which is reason that states are better. And they don't have evidence that their control is mutually exclusive. They read one LII card and fiat solves that. And that was the answer. What I just read was answer to object fiat, which we get. And moving on to case, since I have time, our defense. They don't have a very good internal link to all of agriculture collapsing and offense. This includes evidence. Water markets actually lead to farmers selling a lot of their water because they know they can make money off of it instead of planting crops. The example of the evidence is about rice. It demonstrates we know this will happen. And they say that the semiconductor industry, like the turn isn't like viable because they didn't work hard at it, but still it just won't be a turn. It'll just be more offense on their case. And I'll extend it now. The semiconductor industry makes water shortages worse because they never hit their water conservation target numbers. Gooding, that's Gooding. Making chips takes a ton of water, and the executive executives of these big companies don't care. It turns warming, i.e. makes warming worse. Our corporate evidence is it's clear that semiconductor industry wastes a ton of water and has a huge greenhouse gas impact, which makes warming worse. And now let's extend cards to the modeling advantage. Defense, extend COVID-19. Even if some conflicts exist, the one that have the impacts of the one EC are both countries. Water shortages lead to more cooperation, which is happening right now. That's Mulani and Aurora. This goes basically conceded. They concede the fact that India and Pakistan are already cooperating on water. And the only thing in their evidence is about groundwater markets and surface water markets. And the only problem is that House 9 and L13. And also going back to our other counter plan, if they can say that they can model off of, if the AF is allowed to say that other countries will model off of their leadership, that means that our counter plan can totally solve for the entirety of the second advantage as well as the first. Because if they're going to model off of the AF with literally nothing except blueprints, that means with the financial incentives, they're even more incentivized to follow through, which means our counter plan solves better, and it has the net benefit of federalism. And our evidence is specific to each plank as well. We give evidence. Yeah. I'm open for cross.
All right, thanks. Can you turn your video on? Give me 1 second, just get my timer ready. All right. First off, wait. So shoot, set up for. All right. First off, on the advantage counterplan, you say the EPA isn't overreaching because there's nothing to overreach for. How does the federalism disadvantage link to the AF if there's nothing to overreach for? Because
Sure. So basically with the AF, what's happening in the AF is that the EPA or like the federal government is overreaching and putting their laws onto states and interstate like waters, while the counter plan isn't doing that. They're only doing international stuff. They're providing incentives for the international community to follow through with the plan.
So how when do we say, all right, when do we say we're the EPA?
I mean, like the EPA regulates water, so obviously you'd have to use.
I mean, it
EPA.
doesn't matter if you're the
Protects.
the federal government.
And even then, that's not
sure.
our only link. We have a link called the Craig 11 card in the 1NC, which is also says that water markets, which is more of a specific link, which shows that water markets lead to increase in federalism or decrease in federalism.
Okay, sure. So do states have the authority to trade water with other states now?
What do you mean by that?
Like, can states trade water with each other? Like you say, states have their own water markets. Can they trade with?
Yeah, that's one of our cards in the 1NC.
Sure. So in that card, can you point me to where it says states can trade water with each other?
Sure. So that's in the 1NC, but I also extended it in here. It says that sorry, let me get to it. It's the Craig 11 card, which says that Western states have increased support of water markets, and it would lead to more equitable interstate distribution.
Yeah, sure. So it's saying encouraging water markets between the states. Does that mean that water markets between the states don't exist now?
It says it's not saying that. What it's saying is that it can create interstate water markets.
How does it? All right, sure, that's fine. Sorry. All right, so for federalism, can you explain the internal, actually no, for the advantage counterplan, how do we get these like energy sources that are like renewables that outcompete fossil fuels?
Sure. So let me pull it up. Okay. So basically what we're saying with this counter plan.
Actually, that's fine. Wait. Okay, so this carbon tax, who's taxed? Like who does the federal government tax for carbon?
Wait 1 second. Let me pull it up. Okay. So the carbon tax would be imposed on.
Are we just assuming companies that produce carbon?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. That's time.
Start running prep on my first word. Sorry, stop prep to use 3 minutes and 15 seconds. My partner's sending a doc right now.
Okay, doc is sent. Okay. Order is going to be the disad and then the case, federalism, and then the shortages and modeling advantage.
Sorry, can we get that again?
Yes. Oh wait. The order. Yeah. Federalism and then shortages and modeling. Okay. I'm gonna think everyone has the document. Okay. Stop me at any time if you need. Unmute and stop me at any time if you need me to stop for any reason. And I'll be good. Sorry, the document is loading. Okay.
On the federalism dissent overview, the shifting control of water resources from state to federal government causes massive conflict with federalism, which destroys the ability to solve warming/water pollution because cooperation is key. Warming causes extinction is the most probable and dire impact on the ground. Explained Craig. A national water market would mean a shift in water federalism, giving the power from the states to the federal government guarantees a considerable amount of opposition backlash to the state levels, which undermines any attempt to maintain a national water market. And the balance of state and federal water authority is key for the future of water and environmental protection that's weeded. And independently, if we don't win any of the other part of the dissent, the Craig and Wheaton evidence turns the case because the national water market creates state opposition, which undermines the ability for the app to solve and circumvention. Extending any link to the federalism dissent is the reason that the app doesn't get solved. And explaining the link, preventing federal and conflicts is key to solve warming. The state and the federal governments have a lot in collaboration, flexibility, and power sharing. Environmental policy is the key in preserving carbon. That's how our government was designed. The authority has to be allocated intelligently, ensure compliance on water regulation with federalism and keys to warming turns the case case first magnitude. Warming means the death of everything as we know it. It makes entire regions uninhabitable, causing ability to be displaced, exacerbating water scarcity, increasing severity, freezing with storms. We are way anyways because even if they. We are way anyways because it turns the case and means that any link to the federalism dissent or any type of link extended on the federalism dissent, which means that the case doesn't get solved because of circumvention and backlash. And second, probability warming is by far the most probable scenario for extinction. If we don't reduce emissions by 2030, we'll create positive feedback loops that continually exacerbate the impact. Third, warming controls the impact to the affects. And they don't answer the backlash on the federalism that turns the entirety of the case, which means their impacts don't even matter because it doesn't happen. And the LII practice reinforces that the states are disincentivized from exceeding federalism because of the dormant commerce clause restrictions, even though their evidence says that states can create better water management laws, and it doesn't matter because they can only speak the link to the state's counterbalance and can't contextualize the no link to the other counterbalance. And it doesn't matter. The Craig evidence says the barriers to state markets between states are insignificant. Onto the impacts. Warming triggers major impacts and causes mass extinction. West 21, the ghastly feature of mass extinction, declining health and climate interruption because of a climate crisis at the scale of biodiversity and all of life. It's that is difficult to grasp. Climate-induced mass migration, more pandemics, conflicts over regionally will be inevitable to fail. World Fit to meet a single UN. Okay, biodiversity target an estimated 1 million species are at risk of extinction, infinitely more threatening to civilization than COVID-19. Continue to drive soil degradation and biodiversity loss increases the chances of pandemics of over even more desperate harms for scarce resources. And federalism key to effective responses to security threats. 9/11 proves the evil of 5 national government to embrace in day-to-day and should be considered as amenable of its own paramount priorities considered Islamic extremists. That should have been the U.S. first concern. What is remarkable is in 2000, the U.S. and its allies In Norfolk, so counterpunches, Clinton remained engrossed in domestic issues governed missteps leading to September 9/11 had to do with a systematic deficit order to divide diverting too much time and energy to secondary affairs. The nation got grew, distracting, overextended the system, disintegrated the federal government instituted to resist from fussing with the financial local government public schools, and federalism boosts the economy and political stability. Cat 17. Trump has upended political stability, a period of quick decisive federal action. We could be witnessing the most radical shape of federalism. We must invent science and research to the U.S. indeed to lead the world on invention, deployment, development, new generation. Technology, cities, and economy will be increasing. Responsible states are going to need to innovate and reform. City and urban countries have what it takes. The engine of the U.S. economy and centers of global change and invest in the other vanguard of political innovation and social process. They are capable of leaving these nations because they are endowed with the market power and relevance. We are on the verge of reversing new localism in the United States. Federal action will force cities and counties to innovate in the fact of diversity and create new norms of growth, governance, and finance. And they say federalism is resilient, but the Rodriguez card literally says nothing about how federalism is actually resilient. And we're seeing that the AFT federalism and federal control over water markets, splits federalism and environmental difference to the states, which is hyper-specific to the AFT text, their kettle card as well. And the kettle card doesn't explain out anything about how environment, public health are specific to the climate and water federalism. And the kettle card is wrong. The water federalism is not text. Katz says the kettle card talks about how Trump said federalism, but it isn't decked because Katz says Trump Trump reshaped federalism, but that doesn't mean it which means federalism is still important. And internally preventing federalism conflicts is crucial for broader environmental policy and responding to climate change that long-term things. And they say that federal water conflicts are inevitable. It literally doesn't say anything about it. It just says interstate conflicts over water have intensified, but we feel that the states see the plan and they work together. And the thumper doesn't. It has to do with the water of the United States, but nothing to do with the state control over it. Onto the shortages advantage. They just extend the shortages advantage. However, they still answer that the Booker and Trees evidence says nothing about ag extension and answer to the food shortage turn. Water shortages equal farmers sell the water instead of crops. Our empirical evidence shows California did the farmers in California did the exact same thing. That's the one in the evidence. And they say that food conflicts escalate, they just extend it, but they don't answer the great evidence, which is food shortages aren't because of famine. Food shortages. Empirics prove because of 2019 we were in the worst famine, and it's actually because of geopolitics, not food conflicts, which is we get empirical analysis on the neg and on the modeling advantage. It's called because of geopolitics. That doesn't answer that it's warrantless. And they said that Indo-Pak, but they extend the second point, the third point, where they're like they drop the Indo-Pakistan are coexisting over water and they're actually creating amicable amount. And they say that Indo-China escalate. However, no country wants to go to war right now. And even if they're right about the some conflict, the one is the impacts both countries are being affected, and water shortages increase cooperation. That's also the one NC evidence.
Is that time?
Yeah, that's time.
All right.
All right, start prep. Okay, stop prep 130 is, I'll put that in the chat. But how much prep did we take for the 215, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Use 230 for the twos. Okay, 4 minutes. Okay. All right, the doc swing's done right now. And my partner's just gonna add like one extra card on the body of the chain. All right, the doc's sent. I'll give an order once I just set up. Okay, the order is shortages, modeling, states, the advantage counter plan, the federalism discount. Okay, is everyone on the doc?
Sorry, I just got back. Can you do the order again?
Yeah, sure. It's shortages, modeling, states, the advantage counter plan, and then the federalism discount. Is everybody good? Okay, good. Truth. Okay, and Green Hill, y'all are good, right? Green Hill. Okay, cool. Shortages, food insecurity will cause extinction, instability, and will embolden rogue states and revisionist power collapses diplomatic channels with allies and adversaries. It triggers mass migration that escalates the great power war. That's Costella. And the Booker card is good on explaining ourselves. He says that shortages are like water allocation is key to agricultural outcomes, which obviously the app solves through efficient allocation. That's the bear. And warming causes extinction, leads to severe weather conditions, ecosystem collapse, and armed conflict that spread. We'll concede that warming does cause extinction from the federalism flow. More will be on that later. The modeling advantage. Water shortages cause extinction, exacerbates international tensions, cyber attacks, terrorism, biodiversity loss, and ecosystem collapse that all pose existential risks. They dropped the statistics that are analysis of 45 countries and 200 scenarios that prove that shortages will cause conflict, and they dropped the indicted of their evidence that empirics aren't predictive. That's the Engelke evidence, and Indo-Pac conflict does cause extinction. And conventional superiority causes user or loser pressures, water diversion escalate through miscalculation. That's clear, and any defense doesn't assume tipping points from water scarcity. And Indo-China conflict escalates. Baramuputra is a critical strategic region for both countries that causes lash out. That's clear, and we do get modeled like the herd evidence says a clear signal would be modeled broadly, and they dropped the virtual water from Dolan, which means that like the U.S. would export water intensive good that solves for scarcity. The state's counterplan. Do both. Shields are the counterplan links. One uniformity. The counterplan is unprecedented national action that all happens simultaneously. It means states get the heat for the action instead of Congress, and the plan is perceived as follow-on, or Congress gets blamed inevitably. And the answer to perm do both is terrible. Obviously, it doesn't link to the net benefit because the AF doesn't link to federalism at all. That will be below. And states can solve one strike down. The counterplan gets strike down under the dormant commerce clause. Interstate commerce is exclusively federal authority, which also answers, which is also like bolsters the perm do both argument. And Gibbons invalidated any state power over interstate commerce, and follow on doesn't matter because the states won't be able to do the plan in the first place because it's straight up illegal. But I'll read a follow-on card below, and we're factually correct. Hannahan versus Herman is an explicit prohibition on interstate water trading. Emissions roll on 14 Supreme Court the DC did invalidate sounded in terms and Herman the court of building multiple subject would prohibit the exportation of water for state like court of the implication of its decision for strategies running the using market to print to real government water for interstate commerce, and threshold is low. The 62 conservative court still uses the DCC Goldberg 21 Brown forming the court had the DC really unlawfully in the New York law on the law about the new for sellers in other states, and the threshold is low. Dormant commerce clause is interpreted strictly. Recent POTUS decision proves strong precedent. Nolan Mason 20 after holding DC about the individuals and neither therefore state from taxing Illinois double in 5 nevertheless held violated, and especially contextual to water policy grant 96. The Congress authority must be unmistakably clear. Congress has seldom and authors of water and its parties of revolution and making a restricted subject and negatives. Negative, yeah. The follow-on, no follow-on partisanship, GOP, skepticism, and insufficient state budget treasury. 15, those states are looking less and less upon the new federal policy of first politics have become more partisan. 60% in our control by single party. Second scaling is harder because of political forces. State laboratory have been the case, and the efforts of paralysis have been limited by backlash, and successful policy might not translate. Mark the credit, translate, go to the advantage counterplan.
The Lambert's card is a joke. It just says that it's a good idea for American food, for America to aid food in other countries. It obviously doesn't solve domestically and can't solve globally because they dropped that water scarcity is the key internal link. Water management and allocation from efficient markets solve scarcity, which is key to agricultural outcomes. That's Booker. And they also dropped the AFA laws for innovation because water pricing gets private investors to develop tech. That's the bear and the culp evidence, and only cost internalization allows for innovation in the agriculture sector. That's Booker. They decided to read their block straight down without answering any of our deficits or internal links. And the counterplan can't solve warming. The law evidence says that specifically water management and market policy in the water field allow for adaptation and sustainable policies for climate change. That's clearly not the counterplan. And obviously perm do both is valid and doesn't link to the net benefit because there is no net benefit. I have no idea why they decided to spend like zero time on the permutation one. It's clearly an easy win for us. There's no net benefit. They read federalism against an app that literally explicitly uses the BOR, Bureau of Reclamation. That's the culp evidence. We don't use the EPA, therefore there's no link. And they dropped the cards that said that the plan is exclusively federal authority and that it's literally against the Constitution for states to do the plan. That's a little evidence. And go to the federalism decide. Cross-apply everything I said on the counterplans. There is literally no link to the DISAD. Zero risk is a rare thing, but this is an instance of it. Look, Culp says the AF goes through the BOR, not the EPA. Their link evidence is about EPA regulatory overreach, which we clearly don't link to. And I'll extend that federalism is resilient and the issues will compartmentalize. Negotiations play out in discretionary spaces of federalism. That's Rodriguez. That's a dropped argument. And also they dropped that we solve warming through an extension of market-based instruments and allowing for sustainable climate policies, also carbon farming and new tech that's locked. This means we internal link turn the impact, and also the other like economy and national security impacts for new, don't evaluate them. I guess I don't have time to read the things, but bottom line, like there's no link to the AF. Federalism doesn't link. Perm do both works for everything else, and there's major deficits. It's like there's no other.
Okay, taking a reminder prep starting. Okay, time's up. I'm gonna mute.
Okay, I have no new cards and I'm gonna be going states counter plan, the other counter plan, it's not an advantage counter plan, and then federalism and case, I guess. Yeah, federalism and then the international counter plan and then, or wait, sorry, states, federalism, international counter plan, then case. Did everyone get that? Cool. If you need to interrupt me, just do it. Otherwise, I'll start. Starting with states kicking and extending the permits, it was a test of competitiveness. Moving on to federalism dissent. Warming turns and outweighs the dissent. One magnitude. Warming means the death of everything as we know it. It makes the entire regions uninhabitable, causing billions to be displaced, exacerbating water scarcity, increased severity and frequency of storms and natural disasters, causing coastal cities to go completely underwater, and skyrocketing food prices, which triggered resource wars, current infrastructure, and is not at all ready for the toll of climate change, and we will be able to handle 100 apocalyptic events having at once. And probability. Warming is by and large the most probable scenario for extinction. If we don't reduce emissions, by 2030 will create positive feedback loops that continually exacerbate the impact of warming until it makes the planet uninhabitable. Independently, the evidence says that impacts of warming were uniquely underestimated, which means we'll be caught off guard and not prepared to deal with the catastrophic effects. All reliable scientific consensus proves that it is guaranteed with the current rate of emissions between our scenarios are no brainer. And ask yourself how their bad internal link chain works. And 3, time frame. We are already seeing the impacts of warming and extreme weather events across the globe. The time frame for warming impacts are not nearly as long as they frame them to be. By 2030, positive feedback loops will start and warming will become irreversible in the next 2 decades. Apocalyptic environmental effects will start to consume the earth. And 4, turns case. Warming controls the impact to the app. The impacts are their impacts are modeling and war and stuff. And this will start to escalate conflict costs, but then they conceded our impact in the 1AR as well. But for our weighing, since we're the only ones with hard evidence that directly compares the impacts of the debate and says that warming outweighs nuclear conflict, and extend our warming triggers major impacts cause mass extinction, that's Weston 21, and federalism keys to effective response to security threats, 9/11 proves that's in Novola 5, and federalism boosts the economy and political stability, Cast 17. Also, our link evidence of Craig 11 from the 1NC goes completely conceded. The only one that they're looking at about the link evidence of the EPA trade-off, sure, sure, whatever arguments they have on that, yeah. But they completely concede the link evidence that we said in the 1NC about Craig, which means that they do link it to federalism, as that one goes completely conceded and totally unresponsive. And the Katz evidence indicts that any evidence about how federalism is going shows that federalism wasn't decked. It just changed the trajectories and Trump didn't deck federalism. This means that federalism is new, changing, and still fragile, which means it indicts all of their evidence about how federalism is strong right now. And impact federalism. It doesn't matter that it doesn't lead to war. Federalism is key to having a strong economy, which is key for higher quality of life and prevention of problems. And the issue is not specific to war. And they say it's insufficient to resolve serious disputes. However, it's talking about international countries. We give specific examples of how federalism is key to solve domestic issues and violence. 9/11 proofs. Going on to the international counterplan. First, I'll do civic sanctions. Extend our Migongo 16 card, where it says our first plank, the first plank for their first advantage scales up green tech and outcompetes fossil fuels. And the second plank taxes carbon and slashes electricity sector emissions, thus Kaufman et al. 16. And the third and fourth plank keeps fossil fuels underground. They can't recreate emissions for us 15. The only thing that they have against this is that they say that warming. The only thing that they have against this is the fact that warming doesn't happen or something like that. But this is brought up way too late and only in the 1AR. Other than that, our warming has gone completely unconceded. And the counterplan solves positive inducement has more influential power than the plan and can convince countries to increase the sustainability practices. That solves any risk of internal escalation and guarantees say yes, because all allies want military, economic, and domestic support that's rooted. And if an ally does what we want and gives them military, economic incentives, offer to train troops, integrate military cooperation with security dialogue, we give them more options and a bunch of money. None of their evidence really says that the U.S. is key for change, and federalism shows that backlash means that our insufficient framing is best. Compare the CP to the status quo, not the app. It doesn't have to be perfect, and certainly solves uniqueness and their impact. And our only major argument on this counterplan is the fact that there isn't a net benefit. But I'll extend this now. States do not have jurisdiction over international things and international trades, which means there's no overreach in the first place. Which the plan, and while the plan does overreach, Extender Craker and the 1AC, which goes conceded as a link. And they also say that Lambert, which is in the 2AC, is a bad piece of evidence. But yeah, it does say that increasing food aid would address multiple food crises. It is a good piece of evidence, and they don't even say why it's a bad piece of evidence. And extend Cast 15, where it says the counterplan is more likely model cheapening fossil fuels without economic harm is the only way to achieve global emissions. And extend a Reardon 10 card again, which says the more powerful ally offering positive inducements systematically guarantees says yes, they have tons of leverage. And yes, and I'll go back to this argument that's their only good argument, or the only arguments they majorly extended on this counterplan is the fact that is the perm and the fact that we don't have a net benefit. But again, we do have a net benefit because there isn't any overreach, since states themselves know that they don't have any jurisdiction over international things. And they say no link for not the EPA. This is literally because matters from the federal government. Yes, the whole point is that we're not doing it domestically. And because we're not doing anything domestically with the counterplan, that means that the states don't even care because they can't do anything internationally, which means that we do have the net benefit of federalism because it doesn't even link. And we can solve warming because their only argument is the fact that Lambert's was a bad card, but it isn't extended. Also, they disregard the fact that all their perms do link to the net benefit because there is federal stuff on state land. And none of their evidence is specific to the needs of states inside the United States needing water markets, just international. Insolvency with key. We solve the entirety of the app, and any risk to the federalism, so that means that we automatically win this debate. And that's why you should vote neg.
All right, thanks. 4 minutes prep starting now. That's time. Can I vote? Turn it down. The order is going to be the shortages advantage, the modeling advantage, and then the advantage counterplan, and then the federalism disadvantage. Is everyone ready? We solve warming better than they do. Inefficient water usage and climate change are intertwined. Water trading allows for adaptation in the face of climate change and has assisted consumative water users to avoid catastrophic outcomes. The flexibility and adaptability of water markets is required for future sustainable climate change in the form of carbon sequestration technology and agriculture adaptation techniques along with mitigation. That's all Locke et al. 13. Indochina, they completely dropped Indochina war. The Brahmaputra River, which originates in China and traverses much of India, will be a main source of conflict between the two. Even without water scarcity, it causes friction between the two countries, which increases probability. The Brahmaputra could disappear from climate change at any moment, and China will be inclined to start water diversion projects on the Brahmaputra, which triggers a response to India. Indochina conflict will then cause a military intervention from the US. All these countries have access to nuclear weapons, so consequences are detrimental. However, this can all be solved through water markets, which solve for water scarcity that's triggering these impacts. The advantage counterplan solves for none of this scarcity. The neg has no external offense. They drop the AF solves warming better than they do through carbon farming and sustainable climate policies, and they didn't extend their national security add-on for the federalism disadvantage. The economy impact that they did extend has no existential impact. They just said that it decks the economy, but that doesn't matter because there's no existential impact. The counterplan can't solve modeling. They didn't explain how it solves Indochina war, and they're only playing for it that might be applied to it, which is arms sales and like bribery or support through financial incentives wouldn't apply to China or India because China doesn't need that. It competes with the US to be for the spot of hegemony. They said that warming impacts outweigh on time frame because it escalates at 2030. Obviously, Indochina war escalates far faster. China won't accept cash or arms sales to stop war. Only water markets solve through water scarcity and water shortages that escalate water conflicts. They drop this. There's 2 independent voter ballots. Okay. Perm do both solves because there's no federalism net benefit. Well, first off, we have 2 links. One is the DCC card that says interstate water trading is the exclusive authority of the federal government, means there's no overreach at all because the states never had the authority to implement interstate water trading or regulate it. Only the federal government can regulate interstate water trading, and their card is horrible on this. It's in the context of what the federal government should do to increase cooperations between states through interstate water trading. It never says that the states have the authority. That's the only card that they can rely on. They cold conceded that the AF isn't the EPA and that only the EPA links. Their generic water protection links are specifically about the EPA. We're the Bureau of Reclamation. That's CULP. They've conceded this. That means there's no link. Perm do both obviously solves because there's no net benefit, and water scarcity water markets are key to price incentives, which solves water scarcity. They've provided no alternatives to water scarcity. There's no link to federalism. Perm do both works. Regardless. Yeah, we've already. Yeah, but you have to. All right. Another voter is the AF ballot is the solvency deficit plus case outweighs any risk of uncertainty for markets and price signals for Lopez. I already extended that. All right. They still don't solve scarcity. They say aid in innovation, but scarcity is the key internal link. They dropped that. Booker says water is key to agriculture outcomes and efficient price usage. The case outweighs on the solvency deficit. They dropped Lopez saying that water markets are key because of price incentives. They have no external offense for existential impacts. Their only impacts are warming and some card that says federalism decks the economy. It has no existential impact, means you vote AF on any risk of the Indochina war that escalates faster than climate change. We provide a better way to solve climate than they do. There's just their internal link is just to broader environmental policies for climate. We provide like actual technology to solve climate. Yeah, perm do both solves because there's no net benefit and we don't link. And or you can independently vote on the solvency, any risk of a solvency deficit on the advantage counterplan, and that case outweighs on time frame and magnitude.
Good debate.
Good debate.
Yeah.
We have a decision if everyone is here. Okay. Congratulations to all of you for making it to the semifinals of the middle school TOC. A really impressive accomplishment, especially at your age. The decision was a 3-0 for the affirmative. Okay, I can go briefly. I thought that the warming debate was a bit of a wash. Everyone kind of has some internal links to it and has reasons that they solve it. And so I thought more about external offense and came down on, so I know India is a bigger risk than the external federalism DA stuff, and that there was a risk of a solvency deficit on the advantage counterplan as far as modeling went. I think that the warming stuff being a wash kind of dealt with a lot of the 2R overview, and that you would have been, I think, really well served if you had extended the kind of dropped econ and national security impact. You kind of say those words. And I think that AF is a little bit too far in saying that it's not extended at all, but you didn't really extend any specific scenario to it or a way that it could tangibly be weighed against any of the AF scenarios. I think if you had done that, it would have been a little bit harder. So I think you would have been well served if you had extended Link's Turn's case, but as it stood, I thought that Sino-India kind of has a clear scenario, gets to nuclear war, and has a bigger impact explanation in the words national security and economy, and that the counterplan has less clear solvency for Sino-India than some of the other things that it solves, like warming. I think that I'm a little bit sympathetic to the neg because I do feel like some of the 2AR explanation for why it wouldn't solve was a little late breaking and kind of new, but at the same time, I don't think that at any point the neg has outlined clearly how it solves the Sino-India conflict or said the words China, India on that counterplan, and it was extended in the 1AR, and they have extended water markets key as like a big push for throughout the rebuttals. And so I felt like I'm not really sure how giving India like military or economic incentives would stop the China conflict if there is a big water dispute. And on the federalism DA, I think that the AF is doing a decent job of winning some link defense. And absent the Link's Turns case argument that you had earlier, I thought, bit of mitigation to federalism DA, warming is a wash, and Sino-India war is kind of a bigger deal than a small risk of the words like national security and economy.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that. That's basically also how I voted. The one thing I will say is I thought a little bit about if I should treat the two warming impacts that you all have differently, because technically, like, you all are talking about, like, you all are both saying the words like we solve warming, but if you think about the internal links a little bit more, you are kind of solving different aspects of a warming impact in a way. Like AF, you're saying like water markets need to be used in order to like make water utilization more efficient in order to respond to the fact that warming will inevitably create water scarcity. So like efficiency from water markets can like solve that impact to warming, but you're not really solving like warming, you know what I'm saying? So like I thought about that a little bit. I ended up deciding like none of you went into enough detail about this, but I think one way that the neg could have maybe made the warming debate matter a little bit better was to just do some time in their speeches distinguishing your warming cooperation impact from their like what is essentially a warming adaptation impact, to just basically say like, they might solve the parts of warming that are about like rising temperatures hurting agriculture or causing water scarcity, but they don't solve other parts of warming that might be more productively addressed if the states and the federal government have like a more holistically cooperative relationship and have the ability to work together to solve these kinds of things. I didn't agree that the risk of a link was small. The app just kind of went all in on asserting that like, the jurisdictional element means there's can't possibly be a conflict, and like the neg never presented a card. But like I read the 1NC card. I thought the 1NC card was fine, and it like says that the creation of a federal water market would create a lot of friction, kind of irrespective of the jurisdictional thing. So I definitely think it would create a fight. I just think the impact was not distinct enough, and the only external offense that was going on was this Sino-India thing. The F had won a risk of a deficit too.
Yeah, I largely agree with Gabe and Truth. I voted on just like no link to the disad, but I agree with Truth that the 1NC card is like quite good. I just thought the 2NR, like the literal only explanation of the link was kind of like, here's this piece of evidence, but didn't explain what was in the card or why it mattered. And so I just didn't think there was like a way I could explain to the AF of, you know, how the AF would create like a massive controversy or collapse federalism. But also super skeptical of the counter plan. I think like the perfect version of the counter plan is just paying other countries to do the plan. But I don't think that's really clearly explained in the 2NR. And so I'm just kind of skeptical of how it would solve like an Indo-Pac conflict. And given there's kind of just like a lack of a net benefit, I just concluded case outweighs for the same reasons the other two judges did. But this was an excellent debate. Everyone here is like extremely talented. So you should be very proud of yourselves.
Yeah, I think when I judged this matchup in the prelims, I gave everyone like 29-9 through like whatever, and I happily would have done it again. Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Hi, humans. Thank you so much for judging our kids. This tournament has been like the best judging they've had this year. So I appreciate all your feedback so much.
Thank you. Thank you, judges. Bye.
Yep, good job.
Leave this meeting.